If you are a guy that plays both ways and you're going to a combine or a camp, it could be at K-State, KU, Kansas City Varsity, 810, whatever it is. Look for reps, guys. Look for reps. Go where the reps are.
Hello and welcome to the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on the Kansas City Sports Network, brought to you by Home Field Apparel. I'm Kevin Flaherty, and I'm here as always with Ryan Wallace, and we're talking about the world of local recruiting, from Kansas and Kansas City prospects to the college classes at Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri. We're coming off a special live show a week ago where Ian Premer, 24/7 Sports #1 player in Kansas, named his 5 finalists and spoke about each of those schools. So I'd highly recommend you go back and check that out. This week, we've got a little bit of a more varied show, from a new commitment to a bit of an NFL draft roundup for local prospects. And finally, our first big local combine of the spring. As always, if you like what you're hearing, comment below, tell your friends about us, subscribe, hit that like button, or leave us with a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts, like Apple or Spotify. All of those things help us to grow the show, help us with the algorithm, and help to put us in front of more people like you. Ryan, let's go ahead and hit the alarm.
Ooh, yeah, that's right. We got to fire this one up today.
We said it wouldn't take long for Kansas State to start building some recruiting momentum this spring, and the Wildcats grabbed their second commit in less than a week when Putnam City product Dijon Ackerson pledged to the Wildcats. What is Kansas State getting in the Oklahoman?
Yeah, well, DJ Ackerson Jr. Is a kid that, I thought, he put it really accurately to Cole Carmody and the guys over at Go Power Cat when they kind of asked him to describe himself. And he said, look, I'm fast, I'm fierce, and I'm fearless. And when you go through his tape, man, I tell you, 71 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 8 sacks down at Putnam City in Oklahoma. He's really dominant, I thought, watching his tape, coming downhill, especially when they send him, off the edge, just strict blitz type of assignment. I thought he's really good. I think there are times that he's still maybe processing a bit in terms of coverage. There is a little bit of hesitancy there, and maybe that was just his junior season, and senior year he comes into the fold a little bit more, just again with experience, or maybe again that's just maybe not the strongest suit of his game. But if K-State is going to use him at the strong side linebackers position, there's Sam. That is something that he'll have to improve on. But again, I think the way Kansas State's linebacking core is shaping up right now, Kevin, I don't think there's a rush to get DJ Ackerson onto the field. I think with his athletic ability, you could see him maybe getting his toes in the water through special teams and then, developing from there. He's got a great guy, I think, a local guy in Des Purnell that he can at least watch this season. Won't be there by the time he's there, but a great guy to watch on tape when he's there for games, when he's watching K-State from afar this season as a commitment. Des Purnell is a great guy. He came in about the same size. I think Ackerson's 6'2", Des is more 6 foot, 6'1", but Des came out of Hayden at about 195, and that's what Ackerson Jr. is playing at right now in Putnam City. So, the same style of body, I think the same kind of play, and maybe it's the same kind of trajectory in the road that he takes. He's still only 16 years old, Kevin. Yep. So, a kid that I think has a long way to go, and K-State is tapping in on that athletic ability in what continues to be, at least so far, shaping up to be a 2026 battle between K-State and Oklahoma State. Those two teams are going at it right now on the recruiting trail. Look like Oklahoma State is probably going to get one, the Gaines kid or Goins kid out of Oklahoma, but now K-State gets their hands on Ackerson, and there's still more to come. So it's all knotted up, but I think that's a battle that's going to continue.
We say this a lot on this show. Kansas State gets Kansas State guys, right? And Ackerman seems to sort of fit the mold of players that they've had find success at those positions in the past. He picked K-State over multiple other power conference offers, and he gives the Wildcats 3 commitments in that 2026 class. Because of the nature of last week's show, we kind of took a week off from our prospect profiles when we feature a pair of under-the-radar local players one from the Missouri side of the Kansas City Metro and one from the state of Kansas. Ryan, this week you're on Missouri duty, so who's standing out to you?
I'm actually going to go with a player that we saw in week 1 live and in color last fall, Draven Colvin out of Staley High School, a big tailback out there. He's 6'3", 225 now. Kevin, when we saw him, he was playing at about 6'3", 190. And even then, again, he was the type of kid that stood out in a backfield quite literally. And then you start to see him run a little bit and you go, oh, that's why he's playing tailback, because he is pretty athletic and pretty elusive. I thought, in a lot of the tape, it maybe doesn't even do it justice just how quick he can be. Long strider, a kid that, with his frame, he's not, he gets caught a little bit, downfield, but it's 60 yards downfield, 70 yards downfield. Yeah. He's got a good 1-2 cut, and then he's gone. I think the acceleration shows again and again and again. And he has, for a bigger back, Kevin, kind of the ability to get skinny, but also play strong, as you see there in that clip. But this clip right here from his sophomore clip is one that I wanted to highlight in particular, where you see him on kick coverage, because I think this is where maybe his future lies. You see the aggression, you see the physicality from him a little bit that you don't always maybe get a chance to see when he's trying to take a ball carry out wide, or be a ball catcher on offense. I think this is a kid, Kevin, the more I think about it, that is primed to have big potential, I think, on the defensive side of the ball. And this is why, and not just why I picked him this week, but also this is why I think for him in the future that I think defense makes a lot of sense. Athletically, Kevin, this is what he's done just in the course of like the last week.
Okay.
He had a PR in the 100 meters of 11:04 at 225 pounds. We're knocking on the door of 11, possibly sub 11, and he's gained 15 pounds since we saw him, last fall. He's a guy that long jumped for the first time ever last week, and in his first attempt, 21 feet 6 inches. He's 1,000-pound club guy, 320 hang clean. Is time for first on the team out there at Staley. Second team all-district guy as a junior. He has plans to play both ways this season, which I think is a positive. They didn't necessarily need him last year to play both ways, but it sounds like that's the course of action. I think that's great for Draven to get more tape of him on defense. But, I reached out to Coach Hudgens at Staley, and he said he's just a flat-out stud, a kid that loves football. AJ Gowan is another guy at Staley that I think the staff out there feels like maybe going a little bit overlooked and under the radar. Draven, though, I think is a kid that, statistically put it out there on tape last year and now is putting together the type of offseason in terms of the track times that is going to get some folks' attention. I think we talk about it all the time this time of year. You go to the camps, you go to the combines, you put together that type of performance when it comes to testing. And then if you can back it up when the pads come on, that's what's going to get some attention. I really like what Draven Colvin is doing this offseason. And again, shout out to Coach Bouchard, who's really helped in terms of his testing and his growth as an athlete. Some of the things he's been doing with this strength and conditioning team over there throughout the offseason, it is really paying dividends. Excited to see him this fall, Kevin.
I'm glad you brought Colvin up, because he's a guy that I agree with you that his ceiling is higher, I think, on defense. But when you see him get the ball, you understand why he's getting the football. Right. And the other thing about it is, from Gary Patterson on it, and probably before Patterson, but Patterson was one of those guys that it felt like if he had 11 guys on defense, 9 were former offensive guys. He really enjoyed guys having understanding ball skills, understanding what they were doing. Colvin's a guy that kind of fits that mold, being a big jumbo athlete who has ball skills, and I think is going to have the physicality, the athleticism, and could be one of those guys that really takes off.
How about you in Kansas?
Yeah. I'm going to go with a player who, as weird as it sounds, he's had a little bit of a boomerang, right? He showed up on our radars really early in the process, and like so many players, kind of went through that whole sort of nitpicking over-evaluation phase and has reemerged on the other side as someone that, despite being in the spotlight for so much of his high school career, he's now kind of back on the underrated part of that spectrum. And Ryan, part of that comes from a position change. Beloit's Brody Litton has been a guy that a lot of people have looked at as a potential tight end, maybe a defensive end, depending on where his frame went for a long time. I think we saw him for the first time in person right after his freshman year of high school. But now, Ryan, he's training as an offensive tackle, and I could not be more excited for that development. When you watch his tape, you're talking about a guy who's a legitimate 6'6", and watch him run here. And you look at it and you say, okay, like for a tight end, maybe not the most athletic guy, but then you start looking at him as a left tackle, right? And being somebody that has the physicality to block, like you're seeing in these clips. You see the athleticism at times on defense. You see him having the 30-plus yard catches as a tight end, and you say, okay, oh my gosh, now this guy is all of a sudden training to be a left tackle. And right now, according to his trainer and friend of the show, James Tabor, he's up to about 255 pounds, and that frame, his potential at that left tackle spot, starting to pick up college attention. He has offers from New Mexico, Southern Illinois, and Eastern Illinois, and schools like Washington State are starting to sniff around his potential offers as well. It feels like we always say this in our prospect profiles, Ryan, but Brody really does feel like a guy that when he flashes at camps this summer, going to tackle with that frame, with the athleticism, with how new he is to playing tackle, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he really starts to build more buzz than he's had in the past 6 months.
Well, and with Brody, I think you point out an interesting thing that it just reminded me of while we're recording here is Holden Bass was in the same type of category. As a kid that we knew about as a freshman coming out of Nemaha, he was kind of the talk of what you would consider maybe Western Kansas to those folks out here like us in Kansas City that maybe don't get a chance to get out there and see the smaller classes as much. And then, it was like you kind of expect when you hear about kids as a freshman for them to take off. And so it's not that Brody's gotten worse, just like Holden didn't get any worse.
Yeah.
But then it was like the things clicked, right, for Holden, like senior year. It all came together. And I think that the move to tackle, it's all going to click for Brody. I love this move for him. Again, he comes from football bloodlines. Dad, Travis Litton, linebacker at Kansas State. Many might have the photo of Travis Litton in their house, Kevin, which is one that Kansas fans don't like to talk about. He was part of that linebacking core that sandwiched who was the KU quarterback? Max, was it Wegner?
It was, Wegner. Yeah.
Just sandwiched him. Anyway, so that is Brody's father.
I don't know how Zach Wegner lived through that. But
no. I don't know how either of them.
I don't know how he's still with us. Thank God he is, but that's one of the most savage hits that I think I've ever seen. And I mean, in today's football, Ryan, like not just flags. I mean, you're talking like prison sentences, like maybe people getting deported, like all of these different things. Like it was that unbelievable of a hit, and I think one that obviously K-State fans were cheering, but also everybody kind of, grabbed their chest like, oh my gosh, is that guy going to be okay?
Going to live. Yeah. Well, I mean, for him to continue on and for Litton and Jeff Kelly to just pop up the way they did was kind of like, they shouldn't have popped up so fast either, but they were able to. Anyway, back on topic here, folks. But I will say, I think this is a smart move for Brody. I think to your point, all the things you talked about in terms of what you see on tape, I think his athleticism is stronger now at tackle than it would be at tight end. I think you see the strong hands, his first punch, he's violent, he's physical, he's long in person. We've seen him a couple times. So I think this is a great move. I'm excited to see what happens for him. Again, with a Holden Bass, I'm going to come back to that comparison because he was pre this whole roster limitation thing that we've gone over on the show several times in the last couple weeks. And so he was able to get that kind of preferred walk-on opportunity at Kansas State. That doesn't look like it's going to be there for Brody. So what kind of other flyers does he get? And then can he maybe excel on those, continue to gain the weight, right? Because, I mean, his feet are enormous too. Like he looks like a guy that's going to continue to build out with ease. Maybe he is a guy that's able to eventually, over time, work his way up to the same level that his dad played at, thanks to the transfer portal and things like that. But I think this is a smart move by Brody Litton, and a smart guy to have James Tabor in your corner as well.
Of course, coaches also like tackles who are multi-sport athletes. Litton has the interesting combination where he's a basketball player. He runs the 100 meters in 4x100 meters at Beloit at 6'6", 255. And he throws a shot in discus, which you would expect somebody that size to. As far as the shot goes, Ryan, we had the Kansas relays here recently. He threw the 16-pound shot, which is heavier than they usually throw. He threw that 48-1 at Kansas relays. So that core strength is definitely there. We'll get to the NFL draft and how local prospects fared and talk about several players who showed their stuff at the first KC Varsity Combine on Saturday here in a minute. But first, we wanted to tell you about our friends over at Home Field Apparel. Whether you're looking for gear to root on your favorite college baseball team, or you're looking to get ahead of the rush to find your next favorite team shirt to wear to football games this fall, Home Field has you covered. Overall, Kansas State, and Missouri currently have more than 40 items to choose from, so head on over to homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code that we've linked down below in the description, and you can get 15% off your first order. We'll be right back.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Are you ready to win some real cash during the basketball playoffs? Well, check out Pick 6 from DraftKings. When it comes to basketball payouts, DraftKings Pick 6 posterizes the competition, and yeah, that includes prize picks. Hit all of your picks and score higher minimum payouts on Pick 6, plus even more cash if you outscore the competition. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. New players get 50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Here's what you got to do. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN for new customers to play $5. Get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offers. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
We're back with the Verbal Commitment Podcast, sponsored by Home Field Apparel, and it was a busy weekend for local players, from high schoolers at the KC Varsity Combine to former local high schoolers chasing their dreams in this past weekend's NFL Draft. Before we get into the NFL Draft, I wanted to congratulate our teammates here at KCSN on a terrific live draft show filled with unique analysis and certainly unique humor. It was a great production. They did a great job of filling a lot of time. Also, thanks to Ben Holiday for hosting and doing a first-class job, as always. Moving on to the NFL Draft, a number of local players heard their names called, but none as early as former Lee's Summit North and Missouri product Armand Membu, who went to the number 7 overall pick to the New York Jets. Ryan, I know you were ahead of the curve on Membu, but predicting him as a top 10 pick certainly would have been difficult.
Yeah, no, I mean, even I did not see that one coming, but it's a courtesy to, the work that Armand did in Columbia with the Missouri Tigers. And again, like, I thought that would be a great fit for him when he ended up committing to Missouri. as a guard, and then he goes out there and he proves that he can play both guard and tackle. And again, I think that it ends up just being a blessing because he's going to go to the Jets. And if it works out at tackle, great. If not, he's going to slide into guard and be one hell of a guard. So, you knew watching him again in high school athletically, and I've told the story before when they lined Armand Membu out at wide receiver to throw screens out there. And again, like his job was just to get the first cornerbacks that were like up along the line of scrimmage. But still, like he was able to do like 1, 2, like he's moving to his third block on screens out there with ease. I mean, the agility, the lateral quickness, that was all there. It was just awesome. It was awesome to see a Kansas City kid and a kid that where football wasn't always like the very first thing. Like he grew into a football player because again, they talked about it on the broadcast. Like he was a soccer guy at one point. It was awesome to see his journey take, full shape and always good. We're always going to highlight the kids from the Kansas area here. And he was definitely one that was easy to cheer for and root for throughout his recruiting process and now into his NFL draft or NFL career.
I know a lot of us thought that Membu would go at this point heading into the draft. Was there somebody who was a local guy that maybe went earlier than you thought that they might wind up going?
Yeah, honestly, a guy that we both love, but I never would have pegged him. I say him, Jacob Parrish. I would have never pegged Jacob Parrish to go as high as he did. Yeah. And I'm talking like as recently as when he declared, I'm going to, forego any eligibility that I still have with K-State and go ahead into the NFL draft. It was like, even myself who's watched him since high school and, every Saturday since he got to K-State, not to count out Jacob Parrish. I knew he could make an NFL roster. I knew he could potentially start on an NFL team because he is that gifted of an athlete. But I didn't know that he was going to, surge up draft boards. I thought for whatever reason, Kevin, that it would come back to what's always come back to with Jacob, which is height, which is length, things like that. And I think finally we got to a point with the NFL draft process where there were enough scouts out there that just said, we love his tape. Like he's doing all the things that we would want a 6'1" guy to do. So like, who cares? And he put on the weight that he needed to put on before the combine and everything. And he went out and he ran a blazing fast combine. But yeah, he was one that, again, we love him here on the show. We've been talking about him for years, waving that flag. But, I got to be honest, even that one, I was like, I wouldn't have pegged him to go as high as he did. Kudos to Jacob Parrish.
A guy that I thought kind of maybe moved up after declaring it in a similar way, who really aced the draft process, was DJ Giddens. Was a guy that I think when you had that first group of running backs declare, you said, okay, like DJ Giddens was really good. Is he one of the top 5 running backs good? Is he one of the top 10 running backs good? Where does he kind of slot in this group with the way he ran at the combine, with all the things that he did? DJ Giddens now heading to the Indianapolis Colts and what looks like a really good fit.
Yeah, and I think, along those same lines, I thought it was a little bit of a shame the way that Devin Neal slipped a little bit and slid. I think that he's so proven. I think that just because you're not a strong tester, doesn't mean that he didn't put a lot on tape and didn't run away.
I would guess, without being in the draft rooms, that he got flagged for medical, that it was like a shoulder thing or whatever. So he did have the shoulder in the Kansas State game this year, and he came back and played through it. I mean, Devin Neal was remarkably durable, but for him to have the drop that he did, I don't think it was a testing thing. Like, I would assume that.
I would hope not.
Why?
I would hope not. But we know how big the NFL draft folks are on testing. Sure. So anyway, and then the other one, we're going to end up covering all of them here, but I've talked enough about Jalen Knoll,
sure.
and I'll get to this in a second, but Ariante Urseri, to see him fly up draft boards the way that he did, a kid that we watched out of Ruskin, who was, still pretty raw at the time, but a lot of folks, K-State, KU, as my dogs are going crazy upstairs, that they saw the potential in right away. He ended up going to, Minnesota and doing again all the right things. All it takes is you finding the right fit, right? And then you're able to develop the way that those coaches want you to, get in the right scheme and make the most of it. And Urseri flying up boards almost sneaking into the first round was big time for him.
Sure. I'd also like to ask you, I know he's not a local college guy, but Dante Manning was a guy that both of us just absolutely loved out of high school, had a nice career at Oregon, winds up going to the Falcons.
Yeah. Leave this up here for a second, Nick, because I think there's a lot to unpack here. First off, before I get to Dante, obviously the names in white were guys that were taken in the NFL draft. Yep. And then the guys that are in gray and italics, for those of you watching online on YouTube, they're able to see those are the names of guys that are either undrafted free agent signings or have been invited to mini camp by those particular teams. Nate Matlack actually has an asterisk next to his name because he was invited to both the Chiefs and the Steelers camps. But we'll just throw him for the cleanliness of the design of this graphic. We're not going to show the Steelers. And I think Nate would, if he had it his way, would probably love to be back home with the Chiefs. So anyway, back to Dante Manning, though. Yeah, a kid that I think projects great as a safety. I thought he might slide in, honestly, Kevin, like 6th, 7th round because he's fast enough. He's got a good body, covers him incredibly well. I love him as a free safety, and maybe that's where the Falcons have him. And, again, these are just the local guys, guys that are from Kansas and the Kansas City area. You even have Tyler Common on here, who is from Emporia State, but he's a local kid from the area. But obviously, like Kobe Bryant, for instance, is not on here. Number of KU guys, K-State guys that got drafted. But I thought of him talking about Dante Manning because he'll be with the Falcons, right? So that's an interesting, it's either him or Dotson that'll be with the Falcons. So that'll be an interesting kind of secondary to keep an eye on here as mini camps and all those things get going. But just an awesome, I love this graphic because it shows kids of all different, levels in terms of college, but also all different levels of high school. Look at Ty Bowman. Look at Jared Casey, getting a chance. And again, I think those are two guys that are worth talking about because I think folks at the NFL level see what they can be on special teams. I really believe that. I think that there's I'm a Seahawks fan and Chiefs fans can attest to it too. There's that one guy that you want on your team because he's just superb in special teams. Maybe Ty Bowman makes the Broncos. He can hold it. He can be a gunner. He can do all the right things on special teams. But yeah, I love the amount of guys that were taken and are getting the opportunity in the NFL in this class, especially the Kansas City Texans.
Well, we are on a Chiefs network, but with you being a Seahawks person, Ryan, I do have to ask you, two local guys on the offensive line, one Mason Richmond, who's on the graphic, who played his high school football here, but also Bryce Cabledew, who played his college ball at Kansas. What did you think of those pickups, even though Cabledew, not a local guy in high school, but did play his college football around here, and actually this year with KU playing its home games in Kansas City, played his games here in Kansas City.
You hear it all the time from guys on the draft. I think maybe we don't give it enough time when we talk about fit from high school to college level, but so much of it is about fit in terms of college to the NFL, particularly where you end up landing. And I think when you think about Bryce Cabledew, when you think about Mason Richmond, they couldn't have found themselves with a better opportunity than the Seahawks. As a Seahawks guy, like the offensive line is something that, most fans have been begging that franchise to bolster for years and years and years. This year, they finally did it. Gray Zabel is going to be a plug and play guy from day one, regardless of his position. But really across the board, I don't know that there's that many positions right now on the offensive line that, the Seahawks would say it's no debate. Like you're only battling for a backup. Like I think it's that wide open. And so, Mason Richmond being able to maybe give Abe Lucas a run for his money at tackle, Bryce Cabledew maybe giving, some of the guys on the interior a run for their money at guard if Gray Zabel's not at one. I think it's a great fit for them. Devin Neal, great opportunity for him and Ariante Urseri. I think that those are great fits for them. Again, not to take anything away from a DJ Giddens or from a Jacob Parrish or whoever else, that they can't be the guy, or Armand Mimbu can't be the guy with the Jets. But in terms of with Urseri, it's not as high as expectations, right? Like when you're not selected in the first round, that tag doesn't follow you forever and ever. The expectation level for each round that you kind of fall goes down a little bit. So you think about, they lost Laramie Tunsil. So now you're just dealing with Cam Robinson, who has a history of injuries. Maybe Ursary can get that done. That's a great landing spot for him. I think about with Devin Neal, the Saints. Alvin Kamara is 29 years old. He's only signed through 2026. If you're Devin Neal, even if you were kind of medically flagged, if you can get yourself healed and you learn from Alvin Kamara for like the next year, maybe get yourself working into the rotation here this season, if not next season, I think he's got a real shot, Kevin, with the Saints. So it's all about fit. And I think a lot of our local guys found really, really good fits in terms of getting them off and running into their careers.
Nick and I talked about Devin on Pay Heat, and specifically, he has a chance to take some miles off of Alvin Kamara. The other thing is with running backs is, can you get to your second contract without a lot of miles on you? Alvin Kamara already being there could be a situation where Devin Neal is able to prove himself, looks good, and is potentially able to have a nice second contract because he doesn't have to take on those miles. One other guy that I did want to talk about real quick in this segment, Ryan, because he had sort of a meandering journey. How about Graham Mertz and what it says about his character? Obviously, we saw him a ton in high school. Saw him in camp, 7-on-7s, in person at games, all of these different things. Goes to Wisconsin. Things don't necessarily go perfectly there, but he was pretty solid there. Goes to Florida, makes a jump, really improves, and then has the injury issues. Will he, won't he with DJ Lagway? The fact that Graham Mertz was able to get drafted and will head into the NFL and get his shot, I think speaks so much as to that kid's character.
And I just think his accuracy, which is going to sound crazy because people are going to be like, didn't he throw a ton of it? Like the Wisconsin thing, I don't know if that was really a great fit for him.
I agree.
Then he dealt with some injuries. When we got to see him, as Coach Hoover's told us, when you got to see him healthy at Florida and, where he was comfortable in an offense, when it kind of fit some of his strengths too, like it was, again, a good fit for him. You got to see him do some of the things that we all expected and saw from him at Blue Valley North, right? So I think he's the type of kid that, again, NFL teams like the Texans, the Kansas City Texans, that's what I'm calling them now. They took so many in this draft class. I think they saw, like, this is a kid that's got an arm. Like, there's a lot of polish there. If we can just kind of, figure out the strengths that we can put him in our offense and limit the turnovers a little bit, but he's going to have better protection. He's going to have better skilled guys. He's a guy that can make all the throws. And if you're needing just a second or third string guy, he's going to be able, I think, with time to do that.
There are a lot worse careers in the country right now than backup quarterback in the NFL. That's a pretty good one if you can hold on to it. So we'll have more from the Kansas City Varsity Combine on this past Saturday, when we come back. So please stay with us.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Welcome back to the Verbal Commitment Podcast, sponsored by Home Field Apparel. If you like what you've seen so far, smash that like button or subscribe here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Saturday marked the first of 3 weekends in a row for the KC Varsity Combines and a chance for local players to get out in front of college coaches, get measured, get some verified times, and do some drills against some of the other top players in the area. Saturday's camp was at St. Pius. This upcoming weekend will be in St. Louis before the Combine returns back to Kansas City the week after, again at St. Pius. Ryan, we appreciate all the work that Wayne Orr and that whole crew do to put these together. And I think the thing that I want to talk about first, because we always talk about this first from KC Varsity Combines, is the King of the Hill, right? That comes complete with the wrestling belt. In this case, it actually went to a 2028. That's someone finishing their freshman year of high school right now in Liberty North's Drake Frankie. Obviously, young guys don't typically do well in those King of the Hill competitions, but Frankie is stout and powerful. He measured 6 foot barefoot and 272 pounds, which again, he's high school fresh. Had pretty quick feet, was able to reset after contact, and he finished blocks really well with a lot of nastiness. We do have a clip here against Kearney's Mason Beaver, and we're going to talk about the Beaver brothers here in a minute. They were two of the best defensive linemen in attendance, and here you see Frankie do just a great job playing that initial spin move and the way that he finishes. Ryan, Liberty North does a great job coaching up linemen, and you've got some great coaches in the area. I think Frankie's going to be one to keep an eye on as he continues to grow and develop.
Yeah, I love the way he batted the hands down there. Like that's a veteran move from a freshman to immediately not only sense it but then do it as well as he did against a guy like Mason Beavers. You're right. Like if there's one thing that I feel like Liberty North has been known for over the years, regardless of who the head coach was, it was that they were going to win in the trenches. They've got a great strength and conditioning program, always have. I'm really intrigued to see kind of where this recruitment goes over time. I don't think it's going anywhere right now, but this is a good stepping stone, a good starting point for him. And now it's a name that you and I get to keep a watchful eye on in 2029.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get to a few other players who caught our eye. Of course, some of them did before the combine and how they fared. We mentioned Mason Beaver, and he and his brother Isaac are absolute forces of nature for Kearney at this point. They're strong, explosive, they have good technique. And Ryan, I thought the fact that they measured a little bit taller than I thought they might, and they had the really strong wingspans in addition, was a good development for them, especially with the way that those guys test.
I was really disappointed that I was not at this varsity combine because, the Beaver brothers are the twins, I should say, but the brothers are two that I've been really wanting to see in person for a while. You track Kearney, last year, that's a team that only lost by 3 to Lutheran North and beat some really good teams. When they go on the road and they beat Fort Osage, they go on the road, they beat Smithville and Green Valley, and they beat Park Hill at home. It gets your attention, right? And you start kind of combing through that roster. And I know they had some talented seniors, but in terms of defensively, they had a couple guys in the secondary that I know were kind of up for some of the postseason awards that you and I are part of. But watching Mason Beavers and watching Isaac Beaver, I'm just really impressed with their get off. And you being at the varsity combine were able to cement that their burst and their first step really is as good as advertised. That was, to me, what I was really most wanting to know. I think the height and weight, eventually we would have gotten that verified. We get it verified in this instance, but I love the wingspan is something that I don't think you would necessarily see on tape that now we have some verification on. And again, like you've been talking about, that first step, I think is just so crucial. And a big reason why you and I are so high on them, maybe even more so after this weekend.
Yeah, those guys are violent, right? But the thing is, you have to get to a spot where your violence plays. And I think that quick step makes it so hard for people to lock onto him. And if you don't lock on initially and get that initial pop on them, you've lost, because you're not going to push them out of where they want to go. And when you look at the testing, you've got two bigger guys, Ryan. They both measured right around 280 pounds right now. That explosiveness, you're talking about two guys that had shuttles in the 4.4s at 280 pounds, broad jumps over 9, both of them, and vertical leaps over 30 inches. I mean, those aren't just good numbers. Those are fantastic numbers. Those are power forward. Those are NFL draft defensive line numbers when you get down to it. And like you said, it shows up on tape. The quickness, the way that they're able to use it, what they do in the weight room, when you see what they lift, all of that was reflected even before these times. But, the measurements only serve to kind of reinforce what we thought about those guys.
Well, and I just think when, folks that are out there listening are wondering where do they project in terms of their collegiate futures, right? And it's just so hard to determine, because I think on one hand, you and I have always been, we're big on the undersized nose tackle, defensive tackles, right? We've waved the Damian Alalio flag before, and Ethan Creamer, back in the day, Will Geary, even at KU, Grady Seifert?
Yeah.
That's there now. Guys that, and again, they were all, some of those guys might have been 5'11", some of those guys might be 6'2". I think the Beavers have a little bit more in terms of height and length going for them than some of those guys did. But again, those guys, we talk about it second time already tonight on the show, about this whole roster limitation thing and how does that hinder? The one thing that I will say that I think is going for Mason and Isaac, that maybe some of the other, if you want to call them undersized, kind of fire hydrant defensive tackles that they have going for them that those guys in the past didn't, is that, yes, even though they might be more suited, you would think, to look for larger guys at nose tackle, the way that everybody's going to these odd man fronts, right? You need a guy that's a space eater to be your nose tackle. I think these two guys out of Kearney are able to show a little bit more get off, and yet still have the stoutness and the power in them, where maybe they could slide inside and out depending on what the offense is throwing at them. I think there's a little bit more versatility in their game, which is a good thing for as many of these teams that are going to the odd man front. Do I think that they're going to end up at the Power 4 level? Probably not. Do I think, again, that they can't eventually get there over time? I think they can. It's just going to be a matter of, again, somebody giving them a chance. And Kevin, from your report, getting back to me over the weekend, having seen these guys in person, I think that, this summer could prove very hard for a lot of staffs to say no to these two.
Keep an eye on MAC schools, because I think those are the types of schools that would be likely to make a move there. And we've seen guys at Western Michigan go to Florida State after a few years there. To your point, I think the Beavers are the kinds of athletes that you would want to see, potentially moving to a Power 4 level after maybe a couple of years. I don't know if somebody will take the chance right out of high school, but I would not be discouraged by that if I were Mason or Isaac, because I think that both of those guys have a chance to be really, really good and have a chance to get to the Power 4 level eventually.
I just Googled it real quick here, Kevin. Do you know who these two are? And maybe in a little bit shorter frame, right? Braden Fisk.
Yeah.
Who's with the LA Rams now. Because you mentioned going to Florida State, and I'm like, oh my God, there it is.
Yeah.
Like, they are Braden Fisk clones. So
it's almost like I did that on purpose. Yeah.
Any coaches out there, okay, that are thinking, maybe we could use somebody with some power and some get off that are at maybe MAC schools right now, or, again, MIAA, what have you, FCS. I want to call up Kearney High School.
I also wanted to bring up a pair of linebackers that we've talked about on the show. We're both very familiar with, but we're at the camp and I had a chance to see in person. Liberty's Brooks Ragland and St. Joe's Central, Jermaine Collins. Collins was a prospect profile a few weeks back. We've talked about Brooks on here before. I thought both of them really acquitted themselves well, Ryan. Collins was really fluid. He measured a legit 6'2" and had an almost 6'8" wingspan. So when you're looking at, hey, is this guy going to be able to add weight to his frame as a linebacker? I think the length there was really impressive. Ragland was just shy of 6'2", and it was at 204, so really good size for him. And Ryan, I know you just love the way that Ragland gets to the football.
I do, and I think that the testing is starting to come around for him, because I've always said Brooks Ragland is a guy that plays faster when you watch him in person than maybe even shows up on tape. And you're seeing, the 5'10" was 4.23. He's getting up there with a 9.6 broad, 32-inch plus vert, 7.22 L cone. I think all those things are benefiting him, because, again, I think for whatever reason, he's been a guy that maybe has gotten knocked at times. Maybe folks just turn on the tape and they don't think he's as explosive as he is. I'm a big fan of Brooks. I'm a big fan of Collins. Like, these are guys that you and I have been high on, because, again, we think they have the traits that are there.
Yep.
If they can just find somebody that's willing to kind of mold them that extra mile.
Ruskin wideout Roger Haney has been a favorite of ours here on the show. It was fun to see Haney in person. He measured out well, Ryan. 6'3" barefoot, close to 200 pounds, with a 6'6" wingspan. That's what you want on the outside. And he showed off some of the talent that really makes him a guy to watch. And I know, you were kind of on Roger before I even was. What was it that kind of drew you to him off tape?
Contested catches. You see some guys that are, 6'3", 6'4", and he does it in a different way. Like, it's not, the guys that are just trying to go up and moss guys. Like, I think his body control was probably what caught me in the way that he goes up in contested catches, the way that he high points the ball. And you see him there, like having the mind to keep it up, to keep it out from bringing it down too low and getting batted out. But it's just like again and again and again, the contested catches for this guy. And he has a frame though too, that, I think if you can teach him to carve out the routes a little bit sharper, right? I think that's going to help him in terms of being able to create a little bit more separation. And I think the more you look through his tape, he's got a knack for the physicality. He's got a knack for getting some yards after catch, but in his terms, it's probably more yards after contact. He's never going to be a guy that's blazing fast. Maybe you can, again, kind of tinker off a little bit of that just in terms of teaching him how to run a little bit better and teaching him, again, how to be a better route runner. But there's so many things that he's able to do with his body and the strong hands that he plays with that, you're just not going to find in this area every day at 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah, I'm interested to see what kind of 40 times he's going to put up, because that isn't something that's the thing. Varsity combines, they do like the running 10s.
Yeah.
What your flowing 10s to see kind of what your miles per hour are. And he hit 19.4 miles per hour. Pretty solid on that metric. I think maybe two guys, hit 20 plus. So 19.4, not bad, but I think ultimately that's going to determine a lot of where Haney is able to play in college. Is, hey, if he goes to a camp and he manages to run a 40 that's sub 4.6 or something like that, he may give somebody a deal that's too good to pass up on.
I will say, like, and again, this is good that we're talking about these kind of numbers, because folks out there might be like, well, what is that? Miles per hour, that's great, but like, what does that mean? To put it into context, I was able to see some information from one of the Kansas State offseason tests. There were only two guys on the team at the wide receiver position that are not running over 20 miles an hour.
Yep.
And I don't think that's saying K-State is any more or less athletic than a KU, Missouri, Nebraska. Point is, like, I think if you want to even put yourself on a Big 12, Big 10, SEC, certainly SEC level, you better be north of 20. So I think that's something for Roger to hit on. That's something for other wide receivers to try and hit on, is can you get yourself to that 20 mile per hour mark?
Haney did pick up a couple offers from coaches in attendance at the Combine. So pretty quick turnaround there. And I was able to talk with him about that along with his summer plans in a quick interview. Check it out. All right, Roger. So just first of all, had a big junior year. How's preparation since then gone?
It's been good. I've been doing track. I did 7on7. So it's been going good, getting work from different coaches and getting more like experience with playing receiver. Just getting better.
What are you trying to get better at?
Really, it's just I work on speed and I work on trying to get separation, because I feel like that's my flaw as of right now. But other than that, I got good hands and I got the height and all that, so I just need speed and separation.
I was going to say, for somebody who maybe hasn't seen you play before, how would you describe yourself as a player?
If I compare myself to a player, I'd say probably like DK as like a bigger dude who can go up and get the ball. So that's how I explain myself.
How do you feel like you played today?
Today I did good. I feel like I did better during the ones, but overall I think I did good.
When you're looking for a college choice or whichever college you pick, like, what are you looking for? When we say, hey, you picked a school because of blank, like, what's that blank gonna be?
I would really say how they welcome me, how they treat me, how I can help their team, and how I can be like a big asset to their team. Like, they depend on me, and like me being like a factor for them, and somebody who can make big plays and they need me.
You were somebody that we really enjoyed watching your tape and had a lot of fun with. Was there a catch or a play that you remember a lot from last year that you're like, man, that stood out?
Flaherty County, it was my the touchdown that I got. Caught it on his head, ran for the touchdown, almost got caught, but hey, still scored. That was my favorite play.
So the goal this year is to not almost get caught, right?
Yeah, no, I'm going to be fast. And I'm going to get at least 10 more touchdowns, at least 10 or more touchdowns.
What are the summer plans for you? I mean, do you have some camps that you're trying to get out to?
Camps and just work. That's all. Just getting better. That's the main thing.
Do you know any specific camps you're going to?
I know I'm going to. It's 2 that I'm going to for KU. I'm going to one for Washburn, one from OS. I think it's one in Iowa I'm going to, and those are the ones that's on my notes right now. But I might go to more.
Do you have any offers at this point?
Today, you said, do I have any offers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have Washburn, I have Benedictine, and I have, as of today, I got Benedictine and I got Dakota State.
Well, it seems like you should be getting a lot more as more and more people watch you. So, well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
You're welcome.
And that should do it for this week's episode of Verbal Commitment Podcast.
One thing, Kevin.
Oh.
One thing. I'm writing it down right here. Hang on.
All right. Hold up.
I promise we will go quickly on this, but since it is combine season, reps.
Yeah.
See that, folks? I'm using this little dry erase board here. I wanted to pull this out very, very quickly. And again, I'm tying it all together because we had the NFL draft talk earlier on the show. Daniel Jeremiah brought it up at the very end. I still had on the 7th round. Why, you're asking? Because I'm a nutcase. But Daniel Jeremiah got on in the 7th round, and they were like, Daniel, like, DJ, like, what's kind of like your lasting thoughts? And he's like, I say it every year, but like, in terms of playmakers and skilled players, you have X number of wide receivers that are drafted every year, and you're going to have X number of DBs, and the DB number is always larger than the wide receivers because you need more of them, and because it's just, there's something very, 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 very specific that you need to be a wide receiver at the top level. And I think a lot of the ball skills and the other things still translate equally well to the DBs, and you got a better shot to make it there. So specifically when we're talking about wide receivers and cornerbacks, if you are a guy that plays both ways and you're going to a combine or a camp, it could be at K-State, KU, Kansas City Varsity, 8-10, whatever it is, look for reps, guys. Look for reps. Go where the reps are. Why are you standing in a line that's got 50 guys deep when the cornerbacks are getting in every 2 to 3 reps? You should be in the line that's going to get you on the field and get you seen most often at these camps and combines. Even if you're at a K-State or KU and they put you with one position, go through half there and go up to the coach and be like, hey, I can play cornerback too. Can I go over and work with those guys? Whatever's going to get you reps, do it. And don't be afraid to go to your secondary position, because that might end up being the thing that gets you noticed and gets you selected in the NFL draft or on a UDFA or rookie minicamp invite. That is I had to get that.
You had to get on the soapbox.
Out of the way, because the next time we go talk about combines and stuff might not be for 2 more weeks. So guys that are going to camps and combines, reps.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's rep of the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on KCSN. If you enjoyed watching or listening to us, leave a comment, like this video, subscribe here on YouTube, or hit us with a 5-star rating if you're listening on an audio platform. And until next time, we'll see you on the trail. Take your reps and take care.